So, the Final Fantasy VII Remake is finally here, 5 years after its announcement, and first off, yeah, this will go into spoilers for this game and the original, so if you plan on playing either of them, don't want the story ruined, I'd suggest, clicking off now. I'll do another spoiler thing, and I'll try and keep footage for like the demo and trailers and stuff, so no rush. But while I'm handing out warnings, to those of you still left, I'm gonna let you know I'm pretty harsh on this game. Not because I hate it or anything, because I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I didn't play the original, so I've got no nostalgia tinted glasses to see it through. And when it comes to Final Fantasy in general, the only games I've played are 15, and that one Crystal Bearer game was on Wii, so I've got no real experience with this series. I had a friend in college who loved Final Fantasy VII, kind of explained the plot and showed me Advent Children, and I thought the world was just so cool. So when I heard there was a remake coming out, I was excited to dive in and experience it for myself. And now that I have, I don't know what to make of it. And that's mostly why I wanted to do this. Like, hopefully by chatting about it, I can come to terms with how I really think about this game, because it's getting unreal praise right now. And honestly, I'm jealous. Like, I want to love this game, I really do, but I don't. Like, the thing I've enjoyed most about the remake is seeing people's reactions to their favourite childhood RPG, the game that got them into gaming, back on next-gen consoles. And I didn't get that, and I'm a little disappointed. So, forgive me for being a little too critical, and just think of me as that one guy in the comedy club who doesn't get the joke, and who probably missed the trend as well. I know this is a bit late. So, without further ado, let's talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake. So, let's get the headlines out of the way. This game clocks in at around 35 to 40 hours, depending on how good you are at the game, and only covers a small section of the original. And there have been a lot of talking points covering this. Like, is it a cash grab? Is it going to be enough? All of that. And having played the game, my 2 cents are that, yeah, I think it is a cash grab, but it's a cash grab done the right way. Let me explain. The original game was huge. I did some research and kind of went through it all, and it's 3 different games rolled into one, and that's why I think they chose to split it. They took the different parts that the original game had to force together and just made them into separate games. I'm making a bet right now that the next installment is going to be completely different to this one. More on that later. Plus, the remake is a full and complete game in and of itself. That's why I'm going to say it's a cash grab done right. Yeah, I'm going to be shelling out a lot more for games, but it's for more games, if that makes sense. This is something that movies have been doing for decades. Take something like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, and compare them to like one-off films like Titanic. They're all the same in terms of content. Like, they tell a full and complete self-contained story, have character arcs and all of that. But while the Titanic's narrative ends with the film, the narrative in Lord of the Rings and Star Wars kind of carries on. In Star Wars' case, actually in Lord of the Rings' case, both spanning multiple trilogies. And it creates this kind of duality, like the parts that make the whole are whole themselves. Games have a cinematic universe, if like kind of God of War, Metal Gear, I'm looking at you, but not really a multi-game story. And that is what gets me really excited to see the future of the remake. Games are finally getting their first proper trilogy, and I want to know whether it works or not. I don't know if it's going to be a trilogy, but I mean, trilogy sounds cooler, so I'm just leave it at that. Part 1. The what? So now into the game, and final warning, spoilers, if you haven't played, come back, this isn't going anywhere, go experience it for yourself. So, the game looks incredible, like really incredible. So much detail went into the environment, and it shows. I guess that the majority of the budget went into the environment, as it's really like nothing I've ever seen in games. I will say that every now and then there is a texture that won't pop in, and some of the things like this door stand out as being a bit less than great against everything else. An interesting idea I heard while doing some research for this is that this is actually a PS5 game scaled back, and while it's only a theory, it does make sense, as a game that looks this good has to be pushing the hardware. But this is the only hiccup I got in the running. Like, the game runs phenomenally well, no slowdown or anything. Like, it runs so well I'm not even going to bother doing like a whole thing on it. I had no problems on it with a standard 500 gig PS4, like nothing special. So for the visuals, 10 out of 10. However, I will say this game does suffer from generic NPC syndrome. Like, you can tell this guy, he's going to be a side character, he's going to be important, just by how he's designed and the fact he looks so much better than literally everything around him. And as for the NPCs, having clearly not learned from 15, the world of Midgar is populated by mostly this guy. I'm not going to criticize this too much, although I do really think they should have used at least a few more basic models, or at least like less of this dude, because, well, this is really a limitation of the 3D game format. The original Final Fantasy VII looked like this. You know, there really wasn't that much of a difference between anything, because everything looked like squares and nothing looked like it was supposed to look. Now you can tell who's important and who isn't just by their design or lack thereof. But to expect devs to put as much love and care into non-talking randos as like your main cast, that's a bit much. So the only reason I mention it is because, you know, like 15, it was apparent, like I wasn't looking for it, but noticed it anyway. Kind of like the dialogue in this game. So for the most part, you don't go up to people and kind of press a button and get a voice line or anything. No, you just kind of get near and it triggers. It's an interesting idea that didn't quite work for me. I mean, it can work, and it does work really well. Like, after the reactor blows up, just after the tutorial, you go through a bomb site basically, and you're listening to this chaos that you caused as you make your way back. And this is great. You've got lines kind of blending together, and you're not entirely sure who's talking, and it makes everything so real, and it's great. I actually felt bad, but for the most part, the dialogue was just anxiety inducing. You just get blasted with so much noise that you can't make sense of any of it.
Scrap Boulevard is out west. Past the barricades, supposed to keep the monsters out. Anyway, we should prepare, just in case.
I'll give you that this is just kind of one instance, but it did happen more than I'd like. It is better if you walk, not run, but it is annoying, because, well, why would you walk? I know that what they were aiming for was to have it kind of, this place feels alive, you know, people are doing their own thing, very much like in the real world, and it does, but only to a certain extent. Take, for example, these lovers at the train station. In the original game, they were a whole thing, like there was always this couple at the train station being all coupley, and it was a nice little detail to bring some life to a world of polygons. Then people got attached to these characters. Everyone was someone you could go up and talk to and get attached to, and that's what the remake lacks. Like, I didn't give a shit who this couple were. Why? Because I didn't play the original, and in this game they're just some randoms adding to the background noise. This kind of passive dialogue thing makes NPCs the original game brought to life feel like extras, only there to give the impression of life. It's a very movie set vibe, and I'm not a big fan of that. This also made the Sector 7 destruction a whole lot less impactful. Like, I didn't get a chance to form that same connection with the people in the Sector 7 slums as people who played the original game. And if you're gonna take something away from a player, you have to make them love it first, otherwise it's not gonna have any impact on them. This game did that with Aerith, for example. The remake doesn't really do that. Like, the whole world just feels like you're visiting. There's no real connection there or opportunity to build one. All the little things that make it a home are lost because to you, it's not a home, it's just a house. The level design doesn't help either. And I'll be honest, this was the biggest surprise about the game. I was expecting an open world cityscape to freely explore, but instead we got this maze-like design that's just a bunch of random landmarks that have nothing to do with each other, connected by tiny paths. And it felt very false, very unnatural. Like, I didn't believe this was a place that people actually lived. And this goes for the entire world, not just Sector 7. Despite actually being a pretty big interconnected world, it doesn't feel like it. Like, instead it just feels like a museum exhibit. It's got a bunch of great set pieces and details that let me see how things were, but that's where the experience ends. I never felt taken in by anything because this feels like a reconstruction of what Midgar was, not just Midgar. And I get it, it says remake in the title. I mean, technically it is a reconstruction of the original, but at the same time, that's not an excuse. Like, we're going to talk about it later, but the game makes it pretty clear, kind of, that it wants to stand on its own merit and it's not going to be bound by the old game. It's going to do its own thing whether you like it or not. And that's fine, but if you're going to do that, you can't rely on the lineage of Final Fantasy VII to make up for the cracks in your world design. That's all I got to say on the world, really. Moving on. Part 2. The music. It's sublime. I'm just gonna shut up for a minute and let it play. I did spy a track from 15, and I would have liked to have like a different version of it, or maybe like an original, but I mean, it's a cool track. For all its flaws, 15 had some great music, and so as far as music goes, I was not disappointed by this game. It's pretty decent. I will be absolutely getting the album when it comes out. Go listen if you haven't, it's awesome, definitely worth it. Part 3. Combat. Okay, so this is the part of the chat like I've been dreading, and it's probably the source of why I'm so conflicted on this game. I want to say the combat in this game is a lot, but it's not. Xenoblade 1 and 2 both have way more complicated systems that are quite similar, but the difference is within the first couple of hours of playing Xenoblade I was at home with it. Like, I hadn't mastered it, but I kind of got it. With this game, I went back, I played a whole lot more footage, and then did a bunch more of the Colosseum battles, and still feel like I haven't quite got the hang of the combat. That is a big red flag. If players take too long to get to grips with your combat, it's going to be much, much harder to sustain a flow state, which is where you want your players to be. And that's exactly what happened to me. I'm not good at the combat. Like, I died a lot in this game, and I had no idea what I was doing wrong. And especially early game, there's no real grinding opportunities for me to like figure it out, as enemies don't really respawn. I did all of the side quests and I was still a bit lost. It's a stark contrast to the kind of Soulsborne approach of get good I'm used to. This game kind of just goes, oh damn bro, that sucks. Too bad I'm busy. And just lets you flounder your way through it as best you can. Like, not really caring if you're into it or not, because it's got a story to tell, and nothing, not even your own incompetence, is going to get in the way of that. As I got further into the game, the combat became more and more of a chore. Especially boss fights. Jesus, they go on for ages. everything has multiple forms, multiple phases, one boss in particular, and it will have its own section later because I want to rant about this. That broke me, but ignoring that for now, like, I do think that this kind of extended, drawn-out battle structure will turn the accomplishment of winning into just plain relief that it's over. Like, for me, that feeling really set in during, like, the Airbuster thing. That took me ages to beat. Like, I kept dying, and when I finally did it, the game throws you right into your first fight with Reno, and I remember thinking, oh god, no! Not another one. Let it end. It really needs to take it easy, especially on the different forms. I know a lot of people are really enjoying the combat right now, and I've got to say, at times I did enjoy it. And I think maybe my problem is more with the enemy design over the combat itself, because I can't say that the system is bad. Apart from it, it's way too polished to be considered like slapdash. A lot of thought has gone into the combat. So it revolves around this new ATB gauge. What that stands for, I don't know. But this gauge lets you take actions, whether that's using an item, a weapon skill, or casting, which is an improvement over 15, where you could spam healing items and basically be invincible. Now, while the ATB gauge does charge over time, the main way you charge it is with regular attacks, so square or triangle. Or you can block an attack. So the more attacks you do, the faster the charge goes up, so the more things you can do. But spamming the attacks will get you destroyed, because doing so will leave you open to getting hit. Enemies don't stagger in the normal way. No, there's an enemy stagger gauge, which slowly fills every time you hit it. Hitting an enemy with a specific attack or an element they're weak to will fill the gauge faster. Once it's full, enemies stunned and takes significantly more damage. Wailing on it basically ends it. On paper, there isn't really much to it. Like, it's pretty simple for a JRPG. Hell, it's simple for an action RPG. Like, it's just really nice. The menus are clear, easy to navigate, and so perfectly positioned on the screen, nothing ever looks cluttered or obscured from view. Like, I was never going, where the hell is this attack in my menus? Like, no, it's just there. And you could see the action pretty clearly too. The upgrade system looks amazing and allows you to use any weapon at any time, with buffs now being applied directly to the weapon itself rather than the character. And it can be automated, which is a great quality of life upgrade if you just can't be bothered or don't understand any of this. I love the skills, they're flashy in the best way, and they all have an actual utility. Like, you can use them. Plus, you can use them on any weapon with this mastery mechanic they've got going on, and that's simply genius. Now you don't have to choose between skills and stats. You can play Fashion Fantasy. If you want to use the Buster Sword for the entire game, you can. I will say that this also made levels pretty unnecessary, as grinding really isn't a thing in this game, and the stats come from, like, the weapons for the most part. I don't know if they got some sort of plan to port over levels and upgrades and things into the next one or something, but, like, I didn't check my level once in this, and from what I can tell, everyone's finishing at around level 35. It just seemed really unnecessary to have it there, but I don't know, there may be something in the future. Sure, the combat system actually has some problems. Like, for example, the dodge is pretty clunky and largely ineffective, for the most part redundant, because blocking minimizes damage to such a negligible amount. Like, it doesn't matter, and it builds meter at the same time, so the dodge feels like why? It feels like it's only there because there are attacks in the game that can't be blocked, which again brings me to the point where I don't think I have a problem with the combat itself as a system, it's more of the enemy design. Movement is a bit kind of sluggish. It feels weird, kind of, because your combat movement is your running speed in the overworld, but it's at a constant pace, so you can't move slowly or faster. It's just this one pace, and it's not quite fast enough to dodge attacks, but it's not slow enough to be annoying. It's just this weird kind of like, why this speed? Can't I sprint? That would have been nice. And since there's no stun, spells like Blizzaga will miss every enemy boss ever. Like, they'll just move right through it and avoid damage. and there's a top tip: avoid Blizzaga. It's not worth it. So, I mean, overall, I'm not going to pass judgment too harshly on the combat. I didn't get it, and I don't like it. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it, per se. To me, it feels somewhat at odds with the more action-designed enemies. That's all. Okay, whatever. Gameplay. So, the overall gameplay is pretty alright. It's extraordinarily linear, and plays actually quite similarly to games like Until Dawn, Detroit, Become Human, A Way Out, but with combat thrown in every now and then. Now, when it works, it really works. Like the section with Aerith outside the church, which actually comes just after a really terrible bit where you're running away from baby Dementors and people are shooting you, but you're taking your sweet fucking time for some reason. Yeah, this bit with Aerith really, really works. It's a great little section that really shows off what this game excels at. It's a great character moments, great visuals, a beautiful soundtrack. It's just brilliant. But then, when it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. You get frustratingly slow walking speeds, dead-end back alleys that you have to crawl into that lead absolutely nowhere. So now you've taken 7 centuries out of your life to get here, and you have to crawl back out. Incredibly annoying. Ridiculously long animations for things, and wait times that just... come on, guys. What are you doing? At worst, this game is actively wasting your time, which I don't really feel like I need to explain further. Like, it's pretty obvious why that's a bad thing to have in your game. And at its best, this game takes the worst tropes in video gaming and does them really, really well. Like, hear me out. The whole game is pretty much an escort mission, or a follow mission. I'm not entirely sure what they're called. But it's done really well. Like, my character does massively outspeed slow-moving NPCs when you have to follow them, and you have to follow them all the time. And they do walk faster than usual, which is nice. But an escort mission is an escort mission, and we hate them for a reason. Yeah, they move slower than usual, but it's still slower than I normally move. So I'm still moving slower. And it's still annoying to be led around everywhere like that. I do have to give it props. The main story quests do raise the bar for gaming. Not by being like on the forefront, no, but by going back, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. Like, these kinds of missions have been around for decades. You know, this game is proof that escort missions can be enjoyable. That following a character down a single path that has no deviations in it, a literal straight line, can be a good time. Despite the annoying wait times of this stupid puzzle, I had fun following Aerith around. I enjoyed going with Jessie to her parents, and even though you are quite literally led around, like, I wandered off, and there is nothing else in this place. Like, this whole entire thing has been modelled, and there is nothing in it. Despite that, I liked it. It was fun. It was nice. But this only applies to the main quests. The side quests are absolutely terrible, and they are beyond saving. They feel like a cover your ass move. It's like the devs realized they made this super linear game and got scared because of the backlash that 13 got. So they decided to have like sections where it opened up a bit, but either had no money, time, or just couldn't be bothered, and just stuck in some half-ass quests that would take up as much of your time as a player as possible. Quests like Cat Locator Boy, Kid Catcher, and the DJ Experience. I played all of them, and I can honestly say the only ones really worth completing are the ones with minigames, like the squats or pull-ups in the gym, and the box smashing game with the kids. They are great, really fun. Definitely play those. There's a late game quest with Kyrie, is that how you pronounce her name? Katie? Whatever. That's cool. I like Johnny. Johnny's quests are pretty cool. His Wall Market questline did get old pretty fast, not gonna lie. So I won't say it's essential. Like, if you're feeling it, give it a go. But you're not missing much if you don't do it. Definitely above the rest. The rest you could skip and not lose anything from the experience. In fact, actually, I think I would have enjoyed the game more if I had skipped all the rest and just carried on with the story. I'll admit, I don't like super linear games. The amount of hand-holding gets on my nerves, and it gives me a kind of leave me alone, let me do what I want kind of vibe. And I got this a lot in the game. Like, I found myself purposely walking in the opposite direction of where the game wanted me to go at a infuriatingly slow pace, out of pure spite, just out of rebellion, doing it because the game told me I can't go any other way. It is that linear. But the choice to make it super linear also seems strange thematically. Like, the game is all about doing what's right even if it costs you, breaking free of what you're supposed to do, including destiny. And this linearity feels at odds with that. Like, it gives this ironic tinge to the game. Like, it's your destiny to break free of destiny. Yeah, it's weird. Like, 13 got a lot of criticism for being very linear. Like, a lot of people have called it a hallway simulator, and from what I can see, it's deserved. If it applies to 13, it applies to the remake. You know, from what I can see, they share a comparable linear design. So why is the remake escaping the same criticism 13 got? I don't want to talk too much about it because I haven't played 13, but I'll leave it at that. If you don't like games on rails, I'd suggest playing it more like a Telltale game. You might have a better time with it, but overall, this game might not be for you. Okay, story part 1. This is my kind of notes written while I was playing through the game, and my understanding of the game's story just after I'd finished it. So, I got what I'm gonna call the basic bitch plotline. The whole Avalanche stop Shinra rescue era thing, I got that. Then the whole train kid ghost yard thing lost me a bit. I just kind of got used to they're dropping a plate on you, go stop that. I was like, okay, I got it. And then they kind of throw this at you, and they give you this whole bunch of flashbacks, like you're supposed to know what this shit is. And I was like, what? When did you tell me about this? It doesn't really seem to have anything with the plot to me. It's just kind of like some arbitrary thing to get in your way. I had some really cool moments, like with the characters, Cloud being a mood and Tifa and Aerith being thirsty as hell. Also the whole, like, found you, had a nice little payoff. I like that. I don't hate it. I really like it. The chariot boss fight was a little annoying, but I'd take it. I think this would be a really, really good side quest area. This is what the side quest should have been, not what we actually got. The main thing that lost me were the baby Dementors. I don't know what the fuck their deal is. Like, they just kind of rock up and do whatever they want. Sometimes they help you, sometimes they don't. No idea. Apparently they can bring people back to life. Okay. Just not gonna question that. I'm gonna just leave that alone because I want to talk about the ending. I am totally fucking lost. Sephiroth turns up, and all through this game, he's been a creepy weirdo. Like, he has that face that is somewhere between, I should buy a boat, and, pasta. I don't know what his deal is. I liked what they were doing with him in the game. You had to question, like, is he even there half the time? Or is it just Cloud freaking out? You know, especially in the Shinra building. Was he even there, or was it just one of those number guys? And now he's just like, hey, what's up? Follow me, guys. Oh yeah, I can open portals now, because I can do that. And then Aerith can open portals now, too? Okay, cool. That would have been handy to get to Sector 7 earlier. But, I mean, nah, it's cool. It's not like anything bad happened. So you go through and you fight Power Ranger Dementors, and I got the reference, like, you know, one fights with a sword, fists, and guns. I was like, oh, it's Cloud, Barrett, and Tifa. I get it. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, though. Like, I scan them, and it's just, you're from a parallel future, or something. I was like, okay, please stop hitting me. The ending with Sephiroth, like, that fight is just Advent Children. I was like, okay, this is way too similar to be like an accident. This is definitely significant, but just like the Power Ranger Dementors, I don't know what they're supposed to be getting at. Overall, I say the story is pretty easy to follow. Like, the basic story is pretty easy to follow. Anytime the Dementors show up, anytime Sephiroth shows up, things get weird. Oh yeah, and Zack's alive now. Don't know what that's gonna be.
Wait.
Story part 2. Okay, so this is after I googled everything that I didn't understand and kind of had someone explain it to me. Now I know what the Dementors do and what they are. I think it's really cool. Like, I was so confused when they just turned up, hurt Jesse's ankle, and then just left. And I was like, what? But now someone explained it to me. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I think it was a bit heavy-handed in the end. Like, the killing of Barrett, that strikes me as like the story equivalent of a cheap jump scare. Like, it's meant to have fans going, that's not happens, that's not, he doesn't die there. You know, and you're like, dick move, guys. But overall, I think Dementors are like a cool way of establishing the game as its own thing. It's not trying to replace the original, but stand by it. Like, I've heard the people are saying that the remake in the title refers to Sephiroth's plan to remake the timeline and not the game itself, because the game is more along the lines of a reimagining, and I quite like this idea. Like, if it's true, it would solve a big problem that I was thinking about, and that would be you'd have multiple games called Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's going to be a nightmare, and that would be solved, you know, because the next game would be something different. I don't know, like Final Fantasy VII Restored. If that ends up being the title, I'm going to be so smug about that. But I think it's quite clever on the devs' part. Like, Final Fantasy VII means so much to so many people that no matter how good your remake is, it's never going to usurp that. So why even try? Just have like multiple timelines, multiple canon. Like, it's so good. It's genius. Plus, now everyone is on the same page. Like, no one quite knows what's going to happen. Like, that's cool. Like, for better or for worse, everyone is going to get their Luke, I am your father moment. It's brilliant. Still, I don't know what Sephiroth's deal is. I don't know if this dude is making some IQ level 5040 chess moves, or if he's just plain crazy. Like, genuinely, everything this dude says is a fucking riddle, and all I can say is that you better goddamn explain this. Like, do not just leave it. Like, just, that needs to be in the next game. Like, what the hell is his deal? Please. Okay, the boss that made me rage quit. This is absolutely terrible. This right here is just Sonic the Hedgehog. You looked at Sonic the Hedgehog and went, yeah, let's get some of that over here. What? Why? Why would you do that? This isn't even good Sonic boss. Like, the attacking is so slow and unresponsive. Movement is vague and awkward. Like, it's done at that weird angle, so nothing is quite what you point. So, like, left isn't quite left on the controller. It's terrible. You had a good combat system that people liked, and then you just went, nah, let's just throw that away. I know it'll be better just having 3 attacks. Yeah, much better. Why would you do that? And of course, it has multiple forms, except in this case, all the forms are exactly the fucking same. And unfortunately, it wasn't fun the first time. So you have to destroy all the wheels on the thing, and then you can hit it to damage it, and then it runs away. And then you get closer and you can hit the wheels to damage it again. And then it runs away. And then you... After doing this twice, I thought I was done. And then it went into yet another round of the same goddamn thing. And I just stopped. I wasn't even dead. Like, I just gave up. I was done. Like, I just left. I went to get something to eat. This boss is not hard. It doesn't require any strategy, anything. It's just tedious repetition. I'm planning like a thing on this, but like, basically, this boss is hard in the same way writing lines in detention is hard. The task itself is not difficult. The difficulty comes from the amount of times you have to do it. That's this boss. It's so boring. Everything is designed to make you tired. It's designed to fatigue you, making you focus 100% on something really fucking simple. And all the while, you have to listen to your party spamming random combat lines while they do absolutely nothing. Nothing to help you. Barrett's there, I don't know what you're shooting, mate, but there's no damage happening. There's no switching, there's no nothing. They got rid of it all. The only reason they are there is because they were the focus of the last segment, and instead of including them in some way, in this part, Square was just like, nah, just leave them there, be fine. They're just around, annoying the hell out of me with nonsensical dialogue. This genuinely ruined the ending for me. Like, the ending, I had to really force myself to play. When the credits finally rolled, I was relieved. There was no accomplishment, no bittersweet joy where I'm like, I finally finished the game and I'm happy about it, but the journey's over. Like, I don't get to play it anymore. No, none of that. I was just glad that I didn't have to play this anymore. All because of this stupid fucking boss fight. The only good thing about this boss fight is that it comes so late in the game, so it only taints the ending, not more of the game. Fuck this boss. Never do this. Never copy Sonic the Hedgehog. Why would you do that? Hey, so thanks for listening or watching. I don't know how you do this. I just wanted to end with some kind of like final thoughts and one question I ask pretty much everything I'm critical of, and it's kind of the reason for the name of this part. Comes from like a friend who was really difficult to talk to. She would immediately dismiss like criticisms or ideas or whatever if it didn't come from someone who had a fucking degree in the subject. Because according to her, you couldn't have an opinion or insight into something unless you studied up. And apart from being a really annoying character trait, I also thought it was a really dumb argument because like it shifts the focus, and instead of relying on the validity of the idea, like it relies on the lineage of it. But that's not right, because, as we all know, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. And when I said that, I'll be honest, I was very proud about how much of a pretentious asshole I sounded. She was less impressed and pretty much hated me from then on. Like, I don't think we talked that much after that. But it's become a whole thing for me now. Like, anytime I'm critical of something, I ask, like, does it rely on its own merits or does it lean on a lineage? So, Final Fantasy VII Remake, is it a rose by any other name? Yeah, for the most part. I think the praise it's getting is deserved. It's not my favourite game, but it's a decent action RPG with a really compelling story, great characters, and phenomenal visuals. I think if I'd skipped the side quest, like I said before, and just gone for the main quest, like I'd have a better time with it. But overall, it's alright. I admit, like I looked forward to playing it every day, so I'll give it credit for that. But I do think it escapes a fair bit of criticism due to the Final Fantasy VII part of the title. Like, if this had been released as Final Fantasy 16, I think it would have caught a lot more flack for some of the development choices, especially being so linear. And probably the runtime as well. I don't think people would have liked that. I think, having a bit more of a game in your game would have been nice. I personally think it's okay. Like, 35 to 40 hour game is pretty decent, but more would have been nice. I think if I had to make a guess, I'd say that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be more what we expected the remake to be. But, I had fun talking about it, and we'll chat soon. Cheers.